Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm glad you're back for a brand new recipe this week. This week we have a delicious recipe, but before we get started with the recipe, I just want to give you a reminder. If you guys can please subscribe to my channel. We're almost to 1K subscribers, 1,000 subscribers. Subscribing is free, so if you guys help me with that, I would be really grateful. So for this week's recipe, we're going to be making beef encebollado. It's just pretty much beef with a lot of onions on it. I usually do this dish on tacos, but it can also be served on a plate, which is what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be showing you how I serve it on a plate. I serve this with a side of salsa, refried beans, and arroz, rice. On today's video, I'm also going to be showing you how to do this green salsa. It's a very easy, simple recipe for this salsa. So let's get going with this week's recipe. For this week's ingredients, you're going to need about 2 pounds of beef. You can use any type of beef. 2 pounds of beef. I'm using Milanesa beef. 2 white onions. 2 garlic cloves. About 8 tomatillos. A little piece of cilantro. 1 avocado. 3 cups of black beans. 6 jalapeños. Salt to your taste. We're going to start off by cutting all of our vegetables first before we get into the meats. That way we have a clean board. I'm going to start off cutting our onions. I'm going to be cutting them in half, and then that half I'm going to be slicing it, creating these moon shape. You can cut them as thin or as big as you want. Also, I like my encebollado to be very oniony, so I'm going to be putting a lot of onions on this. If you're not a person that likes a lot of onions, you can use half of it or you can use 1 of it. I typically don't like raw onion, but cooked onion is really good, especially in this dish. Once we have our onion ready, we're going to get started with our jalapeños as well. Our jalapeños, you can cut them as big or as thin as you like as well. You can also cut them into squares if you don't want the big chunks in there. I'm just going to be slicing it in half and then be slicing them into strips as well. Be careful cutting your jalapeños with your bare hands because your hands might get spicy, and then you're going around and touching other stuff. You might touch your eye, and so be careful with that. Make sure you use gloves or wash your hands right after this. Once we have our onion, garlic, and jalapeños all cut up, we're going to be cutting our meat. I'm just going to be cutting them into small pieces, small little strings. Whatever size you want to use your meats, you can do that. But for this dish, I feel like it's easier if we just cut everything into little strips. Once we have our meat ready, we're ready to cook it. I'm going to be using a glove to transfer this. Now that we have our meat already cut up, I'm going to be putting it on my pan. On that pan, I'm going to be adding salt to your taste, covering this up, and we're going to set this on medium to high heat for about 10 minutes. After 5 minutes, this is how it looks like. As you can see, the meat has water in here. I did not add any water. This is the water that the beef naturally released. I'm just going to be moving this around, separating the meats, covering this back up again until the water is almost evaporated completely. I'm also going to be lowering the temperature to medium heat. After about 10 minutes, this is how it looks like. As you can see, there's barely any water in here, which is what we want. We're going to be moving this around. Make sure that you don't burn it, just moving it around till the water all evaporates. Once the water is completely evaporated, we're going to be adding a little bit of vegetable oil in the middle of our pan. Adding our onions next, and also our chopped garlic. Mixing all this together very good. I know it looks like a lot of onion, but trust me, this onion is going to shrink, so it's not going to be a lot of onion at the end. You're just gonna have to stick around at the end to see that result, but I promise you it's not a lot of onion. And also, some of this onion, we're going to be using it to make our salsa and to make our refried beans. So I'm just going to be moving this around for about 10 to 15 minutes on medium to low heat. Make sure to move it very constantly or else it's going to stick at the bottom. Don't cover it because we don't want our meat and our onion to sweat. We just want it to fry. Now that our onion is starting to get soft, we're going to get some tongs and scoop out some of the onions. These onions are what we're going to be using to make our salsa and our refried beans. So get enough for both of them. About 5 minutes in, it's time to add our jalapeños as well. Our onions are now very tender. That's when you know you're going to add your jalapeños. And then just keep mixing for another 10 minutes. 5 more minutes passed of me moving this around. I'm checking to see if I have enough salt on this. I'm missing a little bit of salt, but instead of salt, I'm going to be using the chicken flavor bouillon. You can also use beef flavor bouillon or salt if you like. I'm just doing this to give it a little bit more taste. As you can see throughout my channel, I don't like to add a lot of spices on my food, or at least not the prepackaged seasonings. I don't know, something about that and all those other things that are not supposed to be on your food. I don't like whenever that's on my food. So I tend to not use all those spices. But if you guys have any spices that you would like when you cook beef, really the only spices that I use, as far as spices go, the only ones that I really use is just the chicken flavor bouillon, and that's just because I like the flavor of it. But other than that, I don't like any other spices because I feel like it's not natural, and I want my food to be natural. I'm not against it, but I feel like it doesn't go with my cooking. But you guys do whatever you want. I'm just going to be adding the chicken flavor bouillon and mixing this all around. About 15 minutes passed in total since we started frying everything. My onions are now very caramelized, and so as my jalapeños. And now my main dish is ready. I'm going to be showing you how I do my side of frijoles, refried beans, but you can use any sides that you want. For my refried beans, I'm going to be adding a little bit of vegetable oil in a pot, letting that heat up for about 10 seconds. Adding my onion that I took from my main meal, just a little bit of onion. The other half we're going to be using it for our salsa. Let that caramelize a little bit more. And then we're going to be adding our black beans, and I'm also going to be adding a little bit of the water for my black beans, just so my refried beans don't end up too dry at the end. They're a little bit moist. We're going to let this sit here until it starts to boil. Once it starts to boil, we're gonna smash them down. Remember guys, I have a video on how I make my grandma's recipe for black beans. I'm gonna leave it down below on the description. That way, if you guys want to see that as well, just make sure you smash your beans really good. At first, you're gonna see that they're very watery. Trust me, we're gonna let this boil, and then some of that water is gonna evaporate. We're just gonna let this here for about 5 minutes, so just keep an eye on it because the bottom might get burned. I'm doing all this on medium heat. After about 5 minutes, this is how it looks like. My refried black beans are ready. As you can see, they're runny, but not too runny, and they're gonna get a little bit more dry once they're cooling down. So this is the perfect consistency for me. So now let's get going with the salsa. For our salsa on a pie, we're going to be adding a little bit of water, just enough to cover our tomatillos and our jalapeños that we're going to be throwing it in. Covering this up and putting it on medium heat. After about 5-10 minutes of this cooking, this is how it looks like. My tomatillos have now just barely starting to change colors. I'm going to remove them from the water because I don't want them to overcook. You can also cook these in a pan. Just put them straight up on the pan and kind of asar los tomatillos and los jalapeños, kind of like you do with the chile poblanos. It does give it a little bit of a different taste to it. In my opinion, it tastes better. So on our blender, we're going to be adding 1 piece of garlic, the onion that we separated, our tomatillos and our chile jalapeños, a little bunch of cilantro, and 1 tablespoon of the chicken flavor bouillon. We're going to blend this. Do not add any water to this salsa. The tomatillos have water inside of them. This by itself is very good, and this is how it looks like. I didn't blend my salsa all that well. I was just pushing the start button, so I still have a little chunks in here of the salsa. You can also slice some avocados and drop them in here as well. I'm just gonna be leaving it simple, just a simple green salsa. Now that I have my plate ready, I'm ready to start decorating with some avocado. I'm just going to slice this avocado in half and then start slicing avocado slices. Getting a spoon, scooping those slices out, and then slicing the avocado separately. And this is the end result for this week's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I did. I did not include how to make the rice in this recipe because this video was already getting way too long. But I do have a recipe on this channel on how to make that rice. I'm going to leave it in the description down below as well. That way you guys can make it at home. So I have my salsa ready, my arroz ready, my main dish, which is the beef encebollado, and then my side of refried black beans. I hope you guys enjoyed today's recipe. It was very simple but yet very delicious. Again guys, if you guys don't mind subscribing to my channel, if you guys like my recipes, it will help me a lot. Share with your friends, share with your family members. Remember, subscribing is free. I know we can make it to 1K subscribers, 1,000 subscribers. Also, don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you can be notified every time that I upload a video. If you guys make any of these recipes, don't forget to tag me on my Instagram page. That way I can see you guys' creation of my recipe. Give it a big thumbs up if you liked it. Share with your friends if you loved it. And we'll see you guys next week with a brand new recipe. Bye!